Listen, learn, create your own destiny. Create the life you want. See the future, want the future, have it now. Welcome to the Manifest Change Podcast. And here's your host, Brooklyn Storm.
Hi guys, thank you so much for pushing play on another episode of Manifest Change. It's so great to be with you. Today we're talking about the issue of time, and this is something that a lot of you have messaged me about over recent months, saying, please, can you do a podcast about time? And, to be entirely honest with you, I don't think talking about time, it's not a sexy topic that I really want to go into, but it is something that is very, very relevant and practical, and you guys asked for it, so here we go. I guess when you're first starting out in business, I can speak from my own experience. My story was that I was working in, I've always been in private practice, but I was working in medical clinics in Melbourne, Australia, and they were generally bulk billing clinics, and I was very busy there. You have to see a high volume of people in those clinics in order to generate reasonable income and live, pay your bills. And I did that for a number of years before deciding to take the step out into private practice. And so up until that point, here's the thing, I thought that I had been in private practice, but turns out no. Private practice was a slap in the face, actually. It was a very rude awakening because I guess I just had no clue what I was doing. I had no idea what I was meant to be doing. I just wrapped up work at the medical clinic and I went and secured my very first office. And it was in a service department building in the Mornington Peninsula in Melbourne, Australia. And I loved it. It was very modern and swish and it looked really fancy. It was great. But I remember getting in there the first day and thinking to myself, OMG, where on earth am I going to get referrals from? You see, when you work in a medical clinic, doctors constantly refer to you. So you never have to do things like market yourself. You don't really have to do things like brand yourself. You don't need a website or this sort of jazz. You've got somebody else to do your bookings. You've got somebody else to do your administration, everything. It's all kind of taken care of over there, which is great. But anyway, stepping out of that and having one little office in this great big service department and looking at a very empty diary was a bit nerve-wracking and daunting. And so I thought, oh my goodness, what am I going to do here? And so it was really that first week of being there by myself that I realised something had to change. I became acutely aware that I had very limited knowledge about what was required. And from there, I guess, you go back to what's familiar. So we started bulk billing, and it was sure enough getting all those clients through. But guess what? You can't juggle all of the overheads when you're a practice owner and you're bearing all of the risk with rent and water and rates and electricity and things like that. It becomes a very different story. And it didn't take long at all for me to realise that bulk billing wasn't going to work. So we made this transition, and that's a whole other podcast. But what ended up happening was it got really busy really, really quickly. And I'm sitting in this office and I'm doing counselling. I've got clients on one side of the desk. I'm on the other side of the desk. It's all going well, but there's a phone in between us. And I don't have reception or anything like that. And so every time I would be in a session, I would have the volume on the phone on silent, but every time somebody would call up, the red light would start flashing and it would light my little office up like a disco, and it was such a distraction. And, there were people that felt very put off by it, and I had to try and get creative with covering up the red light. But then what started to happen was because I was so busy and I wasn't managing my time very well, I wasn't answering calls, and those calls were going to message bank. And then at the end of the day, I would think, oh my gosh, I'm too tired to sit through all these phone calls right now. And so sometimes I wouldn't check the messages until the next morning. Other times I would check the messages, but by this time it was like late at night, and I didn't feel it was good to be calling people back out of business hours, because I've got this thing about boundaries, and I didn't want anybody crossing my boundaries. I wanted to stick to my time. So then it just meant that I'd come in the morning and be on the back foot, and I'd get in half an hour, 45 minutes earlier than I needed to be. I would start making return calls, return emails, etc. And do you know what? This went on for about, maybe 3 or 4 months, and it was horrible. And people started to get really annoyed with me because they were saying, I called you this morning, it'd be the end of the day and I'll be listening to the messages, and there might be a client, for example, that, says, hi, my name's David, for example, not his real name, obviously. Can you call me back? And he's called me at 8:30 in the morning. Then he calls again at 12. Hi, it's David, I called this morning. Please call me back. I need to talk to you. Then he would call again at 3:30. Then he would call again at 5:30. And then he would call again at 6 o'clock, and it'd be really aggressive. Where are you? Why haven't you returned any of my calls? What kind of an operation are you running down there? And it wasn't because I was not working. I was just busy in appointments, and I was just snowed under. So I didn't really know what to do. In terms of the turnover of the business at that time, it was going through a transition, and I was really looking at the numbers and thinking, is there enough meat on the bones yet to be able to hire somebody that can come and do reception for me? And at that point there wasn't. So then I was having to think, what else can I do? And that's when I looked at outsourcing. And I was very nervous about outsourcing because I hadn't heard good experiences from colleagues with respect to it. But I was determined I had to do something. I wasn't quite yet financially viable enough to hire someone full-time, but I did have enough money there to put somebody on maybe casual. So what ended up happening was a colleague of mine recommended a virtual reception, virtual admin business. And I spoke with them, and they were fantastic actually. And they said, listen, Brooklyn, we can take the bookings, we can do the appointments for you, we can do the reminders, we can do all of this sort of jazz. Well, we can take that off your plate for you. And they said that they could start the next day. All I had to do was sign a contract they were going to email. They emailed that. I signed it, got sent back. Then I just had my phone number diverted to theirs. All good. Go home that night, and a bit of a restless night because I'm nervous. I don't know how this is all going to work out. I go into work the next day. It's Friday. Friday was one of my busiest days. I get into the office and the little red light is not flashing at me on my phone. I think, this is great. So I go and get coffee, sit down. Everything's going smoothly. Clients are coming, clients are going. We're doing all of the sessions, all fine, no problems. Gets to lunchtime and I think, it's really quiet in here. And I'm seeing that the red light still isn't blinking. And then I picked up the phone to see if it was working, and it was. And then anyway, I went into my email, and there was a couple of emails there from my virtual admin person saying she'd taken these calls and booked these people in. And do you know what? It was such a load off my mind. And so, yes, managing your time is so important. When you're not doing it well, you can experience some of the things that I did, and I wouldn't wish it on anybody, but you might feel overwhelmed. You might feel like you're starting to be burning out. You might feel some days like you just want to avoid going into the office, or like you want to avoid certain tasks or projects or even people. When you're overworked and you have no time, you're not in control of things. You're having to be very responsive and very reactive to things. There's, this impacts on your motivation. And of course, at the end of the day, the short, mid, and long-term effects of this is that your impact is affected and your income is affected. Okay, managing your time well, though, allows you to work on the business and pull back a little bit from working in it. You get to achieve so much more because you have the energy, because you're simply not as tired as you were. And hey, guess what? You also feel differently because you're feeling more in control. You're also feeling less anxious. Okay. The reasons that entrepreneurs, private practice owners, business owners become time poor, there's 4. First one is, I'm sorry to be blunt, but you just don't have good systems in place. That's the long and the short of it. You need to have a look at your systems. When you go into business, sometimes it's because maybe you're just really good at whatever you do. Maybe that's making jewelry. Maybe that's being a counsellor. Maybe that's being an accountant. So you're really good at that, but you're not so great at all of the other stuff that goes along with it. And you don't have good systems in place. You're developing them as you go along. And it's really stressful because you don't even have time to be developing new systems. For you to develop a new system, you've either got to watch someone's webinar, or you've got to enroll in an online course, or you've got to go and do a night course. And who's got time to be doing all of that? So what happens is you try and learn on the fly, and you put shoddy systems in place that have really big gaps in them that only cause you heartache down the track. The number 2 reason why you're time poor is because the team around you doesn't know what they're doing. They have not been trained well by you in terms of what their role is, what their tasks are, what their expectations are in terms of things like systems, processes, administration, dealing with clients, dealing with sales, maintaining your website, whatever it is. They need better training from you. You need to sit down with your team, if you have a team, and talk with them about your experience and how you're feeling time poor, and start delegating some of these tasks to the people around you. It's what you're paying them for. Have a look at their job descriptions and see what you can allocate. The other thing is, point number 3 is you're just not hiring the right people. And this happens a lot, especially in the health and wellness industry. It's almost feast or famine. It's very hard to find people to come and work in your business. And so what happens is you don't even know how to recruit because you're very good at making jewelry, or you're the good accountant, or you're the good counsellor, but nobody's ever taught you how to recruit. So you just fly by the seat of your pants again. You have a look on Seek, you see what everybody else is doing, and you think that's how you've got to do it too. And that's what you do. And guess what? Crickets. You don't get any applications, or when you do, they're from people who don't have working rights for the country. They're people who don't even work in your industry, who've never worked in your industry. They seem like random applications. You question, like, why did this person, they're a truck driver, but they've applied for your psychology job. It doesn't make any sense. And then what happens is this goes on for a while. You're getting more and more tired, more and more exhausted, more and more stressed, grumpy, irritable, frustrated. Your motivation is beginning to wane. You're stressed out of your mind. And then, hello, guess what? Somebody who doesn't meet very many of your criteria for selection comes along, and you think, OMG, this person is the best thing since sliced bread, because you're comparing them to all those other applications from candidates that you've received. So this one suddenly looks like a ray of sunshine, and you get them in, and in your mind, you want them to start then and there, and it's almost a frustration that you've got to work through the recruitment process with them. But anyway, you make quick decisions with your hiring. You make concessions. You tell them, oh, all right then, well, I really needed somebody 5 days, but if you can only do 2, that's fine. You really needed somebody who could do Saturdays. This person can't, but you say that's fine. This person might not have all of the experience you want, but they've got something, and so you say that's fine, and you take this person on. You even negotiate above what you were willing to pay the right person in the first place. So you're giving them more money. It's almost so much that you're questioning now, am I paying them too much? And then what happens is you justify it by saying it's going to be fine, it's going to be fine, it's going to be fine, because they're going to take a whole lot of pressure off my plate. Okay, but guess what? You get to the probation period, we're into 90 days, and you're sitting down and you're having a look and you're thinking to yourself, oh my goodness, this is not the right person for me. You realise that they don't have the skill, they don't have the motivation, they don't have the capacity, they don't have the ethics, they're not on the same page as you, they don't share the same core values and core beliefs of your business. They're not doing half the things that you've asked them to do in the interview, and it's just feeling really uncomfortable. And this is a really big problem, because now what's going to happen is you're going to have to look at your options around this person, which may include them leaving or you asking them to leave, which is then going to have a knock-on effect for your clients who've been caught up in all of this mess because you didn't do your due diligence, and now you've created a mountain of work for yourself, because guess what? You're going to have to recruit another person. And guess what? You're going to have to take on board any of the leftover staff from this newbie that's now leaving. So hiring the right people is so important. And the fourth reason that you're probably time poor as an entrepreneur is because you just simply lack the confidence yourself in other people. And so you think in order to get it done right, you've got to be the one to do it. Or you think it's your baby, it's your passion project. You're the only one that can do it justice. So you feel like you have to do it. But guess what? You're doing absolutely everything, and this is not sustainable, okay? You did not start this business to spend 12, 14, 16 hours a day in it, all right? I know that you didn't. You created it because you wanted to have a really positive impact on the world in some way, shape or form, and you wanted to spend time with your family perhaps, or have a different lifestyle, or be able to be home at a reasonable hour, all of those sorts of things. But here's the good news. You absolutely can change, and we can absolutely find you the time. It's not hard. It just requires you to do a few simple things. Okay, the first one is get some systems in place for your business that are going to work for you. The next one is hire the right people. Don't hire quickly and don't hire out of desperation. If this person is not right, do not hire them. They will only be even more of a headache down the track. Bide your time, hire right. And the third point is get real with yourself, okay? You can't do everything. It's not sustainable. Delegate, outsource. A really handy tool for this is to track the activities that you're doing in a day, and do this every day for a week at least. I mean, ideally you want to do it for 2, but if you can only do it for 1 week, that's fine. But keep a track of what you're doing and how much time you're spending on it, and then have a look at that at the end of the week and see what you could do differently. It's such a big issue managing time because while it does sound quite boring, the reality is that it has not only a big impact on your business and your profitability, it also has a big impact on your emotional well-being. And that can have ripple effects for everything else too. If you're struggling with time in your business, please connect. I would love to help you. I've got a workshop coming up in September in Melbourne and Brisbane, and we do go over this, and I do share some of these tools as part of that workshop, and I'd love to be able to share them with you too. Thank you so much for listening. It has been wonderful having you here. And yeah, if you have any questions or comments or topics that you would like to hear more about, please get in touch and let me know. I'm absolutely happy to share any insights that I might have in the spirit of helping and supporting you guys. That's all from me today. Thank you so much for listening. Have a wonderful day, guys.
Thank you for listening. Take steps now to manifest the life you want by checking out the show notes. If you've loved this episode, leave a review on iTunes. Here's to manifesting change.